Good evening, everyone. I am Bharat from Envis IAC. Well, welcome to you for Envis webinar series under Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat initiative. So, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat initiative is the initiative from the Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji to have the communication among the states as well as union territories to exchange the ideas with respect to the environment, culture, learning as well as traditions, and also music, tourism, cuisine as well as sports related activities. So under this initiative, NV Center at IAC conducting the series of webinars. So under this, we have today with us Dr. K. Subramanian, who is going to speak on freshwater animal biodiversity of India and conservation challenges. So Dr. K. Subramanian is a scientist from Geological Survey of India. He's also office in charge for Geological Survey of India with respect to the Southern Regional Center, which is working under MOFCC. So his research interest includes biogeography, community ecology, freshwater biodiversity conservation, geographical information system, and also the biodiversity databases, and also his IUCN Red List assessment, macro photography. So he's a recipient of DST SCRC Young Scientist Award in the year 2006, and also Ashoka Trust Research Ecology and Environment Award given in the year 2005, and also is a recipient of Department of Biotechnology postdoctoral fellowship, and is a one proficiency prize award in the year 1994 from the government Victoria College Palakkad, and he is also qualified UGC CSIR net lectureship in the year 1998 as well as 1999. So he is a member of International Union for Conservation of Nature Species Specialist Group, especially focusing on Odonata. He is a intergovernment panel member on biodiversity ecosystem services with respect to the Asia Pacific region, and he has published 8 books and 67 research papers in peer-reviewed international and national journals. He has published 12 book chapters. So he has contributed. He has contributed with respect to the biodiversity with respect in the Western Ghat region. He has he has published various checklists with respect to the biodiversity of the Western Ghat, and also he has he has also given a name for the some of the species which is new to the Western Ghat region, and he has successfully completed 7 research projects which is funded by the international and national agencies. So I welcome on behalf of Envis IAC to the webinar, sir. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. So over to
thank
you,
you.
Subramanian, sir.
Yes, go ahead. Thank you, Dr. Bharat, for your nice introduction. And it is my pleasure to interact with you all. And I am greatly indebted to ND Center CSIAC because a large part of my research time was spent in CSIAC. And whatever I learned from the beginning is from CSIAC, and especially while interacting with Dr. TV Ramachandran, who is heading the wetland division of CSIAC. So I thank Dr. TV Ramachandra and Dr. Bharat for giving me an opportunity to interact with you. And like today, I'm going to talk about freshwater animal biodiversity of India and what are the conservation issues that the freshwater biodiversity faces in India currently. And I will be focusing mostly on animals because that is my specialization. But broadly, it all boils down to the conservation of freshwater biodiversity, whether it is plant biodiversity or animal biodiversity. The issues and conservation concerns are same. So, if you talk about freshwater, we have very little freshwater available on Earth. So like you may be aware that most of the water is what we have is salt water, and only a very small percentage of freshwater is available. So about 3% of freshwater is available. In that, most of the freshwater that is available in the planet is either as groundwater or soil moisture or as glaciers, and only a very tiny fraction, about 0.3 percentage, is available as lakes and river water. So it is where the most of the biodiversity is harbored. And if you look at the disproportionately, we have a very high diversity of organisms in freshwater when you compare to habitat extent. And why freshwater is so important is that, like, I need not elaborate on this, because most of our livelihood depends on freshwater, because the food production, either be it fisheries or our important crops like paddy fields, paddy or rice or vegetables, everything dependent on freshwater ecosystem. And livelihoods of millions of people, either be fisheries or other associated activities, are dependent on freshwater habitats. So freshwater habitats are very, very important. And in addition to that, the freshwater ecosystems provide a lot of other services. One is especially spiritual service, and India being a land of rivers and wetlands, people worship rivers and wetlands. I need not talk more about this, because we all know that several of our rivers and streams or even wetlands are worshipped and considered as a goddess, and other associated myths and stories associated with it. So all the rivers of India have some stories behind them. And why freshwater biodiversity is important is that, if you look at, for in terms of human health aspect, so if you look at the most deadliest of all animals, it is the mosquito. So nearly 8 lakh people die of disease transmitted by mosquito every year. So this is slightly old data, but still this data holds good. So mosquitoes are like a wetland creature, so this is part of wetland biodiversity. So mosquitoes in human life itself, they contribute. And, like, that there are several emerging diseases transmitted by mosquitoes, so that is associated with wetland degradation. So I will come to that little later. So let us explore the more about wetland biodiversity of India. So you may be aware that we have several biogeographic provinces with the characteristic flora and fauna. So these biogeographic provinces are divided based on the climate, the bioclimate, the kind of species found there, both plants and animals. So we have distinct biogeographic zones in India for the terrestrial system. Similarly, for freshwater ecosystems, so we have freshwater ecoregions in India. These are well characterized ecoregions, largely corresponding to important river basins like Gangetic river basins, or the Western Ghats river basin, or Kaveri Penna river basin. So these are very, very interesting and important biogeographic zones of freshwater biogeographic zones of India, which has which we have got 20. It is classified into 20 divisions, and these harbor distinct species assemblage. That means they have unique composition of freshwater organisms. So that is how, especially fishes and other aquatic organisms, that is why they are classified as different ecoregions, freshwater ecoregions. So, as just to reiterate, so India is one of the important mega biodiversity countries. So though we have only about 2.4 percentage of India's global landmass, we have about 4 percentage of freshwater resources. We have thousands of kilometers of rivers and millions of hectares of wetlands, and several million hectares of inland wetland exist in India, and important 14 major rivers and tributaries and contribute to this one. And we have, I already mentioned, we have like diverse biogeographic regions like Trans-Himalaya, Gangetic Plains, Northeast, Western Ghats. So all these all have distinct uh, biodiversity. So just to show you some of these landscapes and freshwater ecosystems. So this is a Satluj River in the Trans Himalaya, where you have a very high. It's about tree line, so it's more cold desert. So most of the water that comes here is from the snow melt water. But this the faunal diversity is low, but this also has some interesting and unique fauna. Then you this is another. So mostly summer the river is there. Otherwise, it is mostly frozen. So then you have this Western Himalaya down in the mid reaches, that is the Greater Himalaya. You have very fast flowing torrential streams. So several species of fishes and aquatic organisms exist in these torrential streams. And you have when you come to the eastern Himalaya, like this is biodiversity rich, the global biodiversity hotspots, both for fishes and other organisms. So, like especially the tributaries of the Brahmaputra is very very rich in freshwater biodiversity, but least explored. Still, people are discovering. So, this is another picture of the eastern Himalayan freshwater ecosystem. This is Brahmaputra, tributary of Brahmaputra. So again, in the little further east towards the China border, you have these very cold, fast-flowing rivers. These areas are very less explored, but you have very very unique unique fauna, especially the like in the Namdafa area, you have this white-bellied heron, which only about 6 or 7 individuals exist in the Indian part. So this is one of the globally highly endangered species. And this is again like when you have the Brahmaputra coming further down, you have these grasslands and rivers in the plains. So then you have other unique ecosystems in northeast wetland ecosystems like Loktak Lake. So where you have this very interesting uh, aspect of these fumudis, where the people manage these fumudis for agriculture and fisheries. And if you go to the like western India, you have this Chambal River, again a tributary of the Yamuna, where you have this passing through Aravallis. So one of the ancient land formations in the Indian subcontinent. Here also you have several endangered animals like the gharial and other organisms. And you have this. We have nearly 8,000 kilometers of coast, and we have several coastal wetlands. And very interesting, but these ecosystems are least studied and highly threatened due to human interference. So this is coastal lagoons. This is a picture of Chilka Lagoon, very globally important for birds and other organisms like Irrawaddy dolphin. Then comes to Western Ghats, we have several interesting wetlands. You have these high altitude streams and peat bogs in Nilgiris and Animalize. These are all ancient formations and which has several interesting fauna. And this is the high altitude streams in the Western Ghats. Then you have several waterfalls, like we have this fauna associated with waterfalls itself is a separate subject to study. And you have these hill streams. So these are ancient hill streams. Western Ghats hill streams are very ancient, and they have very high diversity and endemism. When you compare with the diversity of the Eastern Himalaya or Western Himalaya, the hill streams of Western Ghats are very highly diverse and endemic. And you have these very interesting uh, swamps, forest swamps, Myristica swamps. So you have patches of Myristica swamps in Kerala and Karnataka, and some small fragments in Goa. So these are very very interesting and very unique and ancient uh, habitats, and which harbor very unique and endemic freshwater fauna. People are still discovering. And you have other freshwater ecosystems like this phytotelmata. So you have tree holes. So there are species associated with tree holes. So these are small wetlands, so like container wetlands. So you have during monsoon they get filled up with water, and several species of insects and amphibia breed in them. So they are mostly high up in the canopy, and rarely you get to see them phytotelmata at the ground level or at the level where you can do some research. But people are doing artificial containers to understand what is there in the phytotelmata. And you have these man-made ecosystems like ponds, especially associated with agriculture, where you can have very high diversity. And these are also managed wetland ecosystems where people harvest regularly. And you have like man-made, again man-made ecosystem, wetland ecosystems like lakes and reservoirs, so they're throughout India. Then you have these urban wetlands. So like it's like most of the India have many urban wetlands. So this has several issues associated with them. So I will be talking to you later about it, but they also harbor a high diversity. Here you can see this is a urban wetland in Chennai, where you can see the buffaloes grazing, and the high, globally threatened is gray pelican also using that wetland. So this is a typical scenario in several urban wetlands. So many species are also started getting adapted to this minimum human interference in these wetlands. So, what is freshwater faunal diversity? So, globally, more than 1.7 million species are described. So, of these, about 1.25 lakh species live in freshwater. So, this is there is no recent estimate, but it is known that India is nearly 10,000 species are freshwater. So this number is continuing because people are discovering several species every year. So that is about roughly 10 percentage of all the known fauna in India is freshwater. And of these, the aquatic arthropods, that is the crabs, aquatic insects, and other crustaceans constitute about 62 percentage of all the freshwater fauna. So the bulk of the freshwater fauna is invertebrates, but and they have a lot of important ecosystem functions. So this is a graph of the diversity. Like here you can see that the maximum diversity of freshwater organism is in insects in India, and if you compare it with birds or mammals, it is all very small. So you have only about 250 species of wetland birds in India, and about only 6 or 7 species of mammals, which we can call them purely aquatic. So like in the this is another depiction. So I already told you, so like we have bulk of it is aquatic insects. So I will just quickly rush through the other, just to show you how these organisms are diverse. So we have about nearly 2,400 species of protozoa. Then you have freshwater sponges, that is about 31 species of freshwater sponges are known to occur in India. And you have this Nidaria, that is freshwater cylinderates. About 40 species are there. I'm not going reading all these things because you can read it in when the YouTube is available, so you can save a lot of time. Then you have a lot of freshwater platyhelminthes, about 42 species, and many of them are very important because they are parasites of both human beings and our domestic animals. So there are several freshwater cestodes. And you have rotifers, about nearly 420 species of rotifers are known from India. Then you have nematomorpha. These are some of the least studied groups. About 20 species are known. So, like many times you see them in like untreated water, is long threadworms. So they are called nematomorpha. So they are not parasites on human beings, but they parasitize on other arthropods. Then you have gastrotrachea. These are about 24 species. These are all some of the rare groups, mostly parasites. So you rarely get to see them. Then nematodes. Again, I need not tell about nematodes. About 412 species are there, and many nematodes are parasites on human beings and also on cattle. And many nematode species are transmitted by um, flies, black flies. So fortunately we don't have this black fly transmitted nematode in India, that is onchocerciasis, which is a major problem of blindness in Africa. But fortunately we don't have that, though we have black fly in India. Then we have Acanthocephala, again another Indian very small group, about 230 species. They are all parasites, fishes. Then annelids, these are polychaetes, oligochaetes, and hirudinaria. Several groups are there. These are all again diverse groups in freshwater worms, what we call it as generally as worms, freshwater worm, that is leeches and other like earthworms and other related species. Then comes the arthropod. These are crabs, lobsters, crayfishes, aquatic insects. All are arthropod. This is the bulk of the biodiversity. So you have several aquatic arachnids, spiders. They are small groups, and there are mites, aquatic mites, which parasitize on them. So these are all very diverse, and you have several species here. And if you come to the next large groups are aquatic insects, that is about nearly 5,000 species in India. So of these, one of the most diverse group is Diptera and Coleoptera. So you know that Diptera is very very important aquatic group of organisms, because several species are what you call vectors of diseases. So both for human beings and also for animals. So they are economically very very important. And there are several studies on these vector species, and but many of most of the species are like not vectors, and they do several important ecosystem functions. So I'll come to it a little later. I'll just introduce you to some of these one. These are mayflies. So mayflies are one of the very ancient group of insects. So they are first to fly on the land, and we have about 180 species. The importance of this group is that they are very very sensitive to pollution and good indicators of water quality. So they are very widely used in assessing bioassessment of wetlands. And the presence of mayflies indicate that the water is pristine or highly oxygenated. They require highly oxygenated water. So the water without organic pollution, you can see mayflies. Then these are the adults are terrestrial and the larva is aquatic. So you get aquatic stages in the water. So this is how a mayfly larva look. And next comes the dragonflies, one of the well-studied aquatic insect groups. About 489 species of dragonflies and damselflies are reported from here in India, and people still discover new species. And they are also like the mayflies. The adults are terrestrial and larva is aquatic, and both adults and larvae are very very sensitive to changes in habitat. So they are also widely used for assessing the quality of the wetlands and the landscape in general. And next comes the Placoptera. These are one of the highly sensitive groups, mostly found in hill streams, of very cold hill streams in Himalaya and Western Ghats. And in India, about 128 species are there, and most of the species are restricted to the Himalayan hill streams, and only about 20 species are found in the peninsular India. And the larva is very very sensitive to pollution, and they are mostly found in the freshwater. Then again, another rare group, that is Megaloptera. So we have only about two species in the Western Ghats, and rest of the species are all found in the Himalaya, and they are all found in very high, fast-flowing cold waters. So these are alder flies. So this is how the larvae of the Megaloptera looks like. So the larva is again aquatic. Then you have these Neuroptera. Again, there are several aquatic Neuroptera. That is also they are they live in the freshwater sponges. The larvae are found in the freshwater sponges. Then comes one of the like diverse aquatic insect, that is aquatic bugs. They are very diverse and both in morphology and their habits. So about 350 species are found in India. People are still discovering new species, and they are all mostly predators of other aquatic animals, and they have used different habitats. So, and next comes the aquatic coleoptera. So again, like after Diptera, this is one of the most diverse group. So there are about 776 species, nearly 800 species of aquatic coleoptera are there, and they all are predators. Most of them are predators. Some of them are herbivores, and they are also very good indicators of water quality. So, and there are some minor groups like aquatic Lepidoptera. So, there are moths of several Pyralidae live in the underwater, feeding on algae and other organic matter, and adults are terrestrial. Then, other diverse group is Trichoptera. So, Trichopteras are caddisflies. They are very closely related to Lepidoptera, or the moths and butterflies, and larva is aquatic. So the beauty is that they make larval cases. So each family or a group has a very interesting shape of the larval case, which they use it for. So and then next comes the aquatic hymenoptera. So these are all very small, tiny organisms, parasites, mostly parasitoids. So they lay eggs on the uh, egg or pupa of the other aquatic organisms. So they are parasitoids. So we know very little about them. So the adults are terrestrial. They go underwater to lay eggs in other aquatic organisms. As I told you, the Diptera, so this is one of the most diverse group. So more than 1,500 species are there, and several of them are economically very important, and especially the mosquitoes and tabanids. So tabanids are the horse flies and deer flies and other blood-sucking flies of cattle and other um, uh, vertebrates. So they also transmit several diseases, like for example, Surra disease, or what is called the trypanosomiasis in cattle, babesiosis. All those diseases in cattle are transmitted by the tabanid flies. And the chironomids. So chironomids are very good indicators of pollution. They thrive in highly polluted water. So you can see them in what we call it as bloodworms, what we feed on the live feed. for the aquarium are all the larvae of the chironomidae. So the presence of chironomid in wetlands indicate that water is having high contamination of organic matter. So they are very, very good indicators of the pollution. Then comes the mollusca. So mollusca is about 217. Though we have about more than 3,000 species of mollusca in India, 217 species are freshwater mollusca, and they also have very high endemism. And these freshwater mollusca have a lot of economic importance. Firstly, that many species are used as food in the rural India. Many species of freshwater mollusks are being used as a food source, especially during monsoon. So they are a very good source of protein, and they also are intermediate host for several nematode and cestode parasites. So they are also very important in terms of economy, and they also transmit a lot of diseases like the schistosomiasis is transmitted by mollusca. So now several species are found, and they are also very good indicators of water quality. Then there are other encrusting tiny organisms, bryozoa, which you require microscopes to study. So these are all very tiny microscopic organisms called bryozoa, which encrust the substrate, and they are like underwater lichens. So they form a substrate, and you can see them under microscope. These are tiny things. Then comes the like very well studied groups like freshwater fishes. So we have more than 1,000 species of freshwater fishes, and several species are regularly described. So there are several new species are being described, and more than 60 percentage of freshwater fishes found in India are endemic. So India is one of the global biodiversity hotspot for freshwater fishes, especially the Western Ghats and Eastern Himalaya. So several species of freshwater fishes in India are endemic. So these are some of the endemic freshwater fishes found in the Western Ghats. They are very, very rich and beautiful, and several species are traded as like illegally traded in the as aquarium, because they don't breed in aquarium well. So they are mostly wild caught and restocked in the aquarium trade. And many of them have very interesting biogeography. So people are studying the biogeography of these freshwater fishes because of their poor dispersal, especially the freshwater fishes which is there in the hill streams are very, very good indicators of past geology and how these rivers and western how these landforms evolved. And some of them are subterranean. Like for example, this recently described Enigmach golem is a subterranean freshwater fish found in the subterranean water systems in the coastal Kerala. So there are several interesting species like this. And as I already told you, India is one of the global freshwater fish diversity, uh, global hotspot for freshwater, but especially the Western Ghats and Indo-Gangetic river systems. Ganga Brahmaputra river system. Next comes the amphibians. So this is also, you may be knowing that uh, amphibians are one of the several species of amphibians are endemic, and some people are still discovering several new species of amphibia, and many species are having interesting uh, breeding behavior, and they all are wetland species. And several species like the like endemic genera like Indrana or Nicobatrachus or Micrixalis or Catixalis, Catifrine, which is found in the Western Ghats, are all endemic to hill streams. So they all require hill streams. Like even is the subterranean Nasica batrachus acadrensis, which is a very interesting frog in terms of biogeography, is require hill streams to breed. So the wetlands, especially the hill streams, are very, very important for all these endemic frogs. So this is another picture of this Cicabatrachus saccharrensis. So then comes the uh, reptilia. So you have the diversity of reptiles in the freshwater ecosystems is very less, and especially we have about one species of gharial, and like one species of crocodile freshwater, and we have about 21 species of turtles, and about 21 species of snakes, and two species of monitor lizards. So the diversity of freshwater reptiles is relatively less in India, but we have several interesting species like this ghadial, which is found in the in the Gangetic system of rivers, and the ranges of which is drastically reducing. Then comes the one of the most well-studied freshwater component, the aves, that is birds. So nearly 250 species of wetland birds are there. There are about wetland-dependent birds are also there, and several species are associated with wetlands, but they are not considered as purely wetland, and they are closely associated with riparian vegetation. So you can see them in the riparian zone, that is the vegetation around the wetlands, but they are not wetland birds, but they are terrestrial birds, but they are always associated with riparian zone. So this is the very well studied group, and we have a lot of information on the wetland birds. And like, in fact, several wetlands in India are conserved for the birds. So, for their breeding habitat or their migratory habitat, the famous Kevaladev Ghana National Park, that is Bharatpur Wildlife Sanctuary, or the other wetlands, Sultanpur, all those things are conserved for the birds. And as I told you like earlier, that there is a bird that is called white-bellied heron. This is one of the globally endangered birds. So less than 300 is individuals are now known to occur globally. So these are large birds, large herons, which are found in the Namdafa and river system, and they require very fast-flowing rivers to for their feeding, and thick forest to breed. So less than 10 individuals are restricted in Arunachal Pradesh, and the it is more threatened than the other charismatic animals in India, like elephant or a tiger or a rhino. So these are the one of the globally threatened bird found in the freshwater ecosystems in India. And I already told you several wetlands, like you can see the large number of birds congregate. So this is a congregation of the birds in the Chilka Lake, that is a coastal lagoon, so which have both freshwater and estuarine. So this is again another picture of the congregation of mudflats in Chilka. So some of these birds are also has gone extinct. Wetland birds, like this is pink-headed duck. So after 1930, there is no reliable record of this species. Of this is it is supposed to be gone extinct in the wild. Pink-headed duck. This is one bird, wetland bird, which has gone extinct in India. Then you have this about freshwater mammals. So there are several freshwater mammals and freshwater associated mammals. Like for example, you have this South Asian river dolphin, which is the Gangetic dolphin, which is purely freshwater. Then you have this otter, which is we have three species of otter, which are all the three are found in freshwater habitats. Then you have this shrews, which is Himalayan water shrew, two species, which are all again found in freshwater. In addition, you have these other wetland associated mammals like sangai, that is brown-billed deer, barasinga, again wetland associated mammal, and water buffalo. Then this one great Indian rhino. So these are all the wetland associated and classic wetland mammals which is found in India. This is a picture of Gangetic dolphin. Then you have this. These are two Himalayan water shrews, so they go underwater to hunt aquatic invertebrates, especially insects. So not much is known about these aquatic shrews. Then you have this sangai, this brindle deer, which is only found in the Manipur Loktak Lake. So you have this floating vegetation, and they are found in this floating vegetation in this Loktak Lake. So this is one of the endangered deer species in Manipur. Then you have this Sarvas duansuli barasinga, again swamp deer. So they also require swamps, especially in the Terry region or the Manas or Kasiranga. You can this swamp deer. You have another subspecies that is found in central India, but that doesn't require swampy condition. But the subspecies found in the West Himalayas require swamps. Then you have the water buffalo, the ancestor of our domesticated buffalo. Like they require water, lot of water, so they like love to spend a lot of time in water. So, what is happening to all this freshwater biodiversity in India? What is the current status? So that is the next thing we are going to discuss. So if you look at the biodiversity in crisis, so that is living planet index, so which is calculated year after year by the WWF from 1970 as a benchmark year, can see that all the terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystems, the biodiversity is drastically declining, and populations of these organisms are drastically declining, and the decline of freshwater organisms is much more drastic than the terrestrial and the marine species. And people have recently started noticing that we are in the midst of a sixth extinction. So already Earth has undergone five mass extinction, which were natural due to several factors. But the sixth extinction of the organisms, large scale disappearance of organisms, is largely due to the uh, human interference, especially the disappearance of several vertebrates, fishes, and amphibians. It is alarming, so that they are a large number of species are getting disappear. Species are getting uh, dissipated across landscapes in this. So we are in the midst of this one. So what is the causes for all this disappearance, especially in the freshwater ecosystem? So the major cause is that our the consumption. So we are consuming more than what is the biocapacity of the earth. So it is estimated that we are consuming about 1.6 times the earth every year. So annually we are overdrawing from our uh, our the what is earth is being produced every year. So we are taking more than what is being produced every year. So that means we are harvesting the bioresources unsustainably year after year. So this has led to the crisis in the biodiversity of freshwater ecosystem, especially in Indian subcontinent. So if this is a global assessment, and if you can see that the red areas are the where the biodiversity of freshwater ecosystem, especially in the rivers, is highly threatened. So this is especially true in like fast developing countries like India, Western Europe, Eastern United States, or the eastern China. So these are the places where there is a huge impact on the natural ecosystems, especially the wetlands, and there is a huge pressure on the wetland ecosystem. So that is directly affecting the biodiversity of this ecosystem. So uh, several river basins in Indian subcontinent are facing physical and economic water scarcity. Physical means actual severe water scarcity, especially the rivers in peninsular India. So most of the east flowing rivers, that is the uh, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri in the peninsular India, or the Gangetic plain, are severely stressed both by physical and economic water scarcity. The reasons are well known because of the unplanned utilization of water in these river systems. So you have a lot of stress on these rivers. So this has directly affected the biodiversity of the area. So in this context, this is also important to state here that the Himalayan ecosystem, so especially in the context of climate change, this is very important because the Himalayan system is considered as third pole of the world, because it not only controls the climate of the large part of the Asia, because the Himalaya is a one of the most important factor in controlling the climate of the not only Indian subcontinent but also on the other side of the Himalaya, that is on the Europe, and also it is a catchment for several rivers that is originating from this. I have seen the boundary of the these river catchments that is originating from the Himalaya and the countries that is there, and these the hydrology of these land masses are dependent on the Himalaya, and conservation of Himalaya, especially in terms of freshwater biodiversity, is very very important because livelihood and life and of economy of these these countries are dependent on the well-being of the Himalaya, and it is a global concern. It is not a concern of India alone or the other neighboring countries alone. It is a concern of the humanity because large population of the world resides in this part of the world. So more than nearly 25% of the world population is in this part, and it is very very important that they have a ecologically secured life. And what are the causes for this large scale destruction of wetland biodiversity loss is that one is the habitat degradation, then invasive species, then flow modification in terms of like dams, reservoirs, all those things. Then you have over exploitation of bioresources, then you have water pollution. So all these things interact, they interact. It is not that they are all in isolation. All these factors interact in a complex ways, and they cause loss of biodiversity in these rivers and streams. Like you can you can list some of these important things like dams and development projects, deforestation along the river habitats, and forest fires, mining, invasive species, over harvesting of the bioresources, tourism, agriculture expansion, urban and industrial expansion. All these things contribute to the loss of freshwater biodiversity. Like these, for example, for invasive species, there are several species of fishes that is introduced by for to increase the fisheries production. This is tilapia is a classic example, which has caused tremendous damage to our native fish fauna. It has reached everywhere. And you have this African catfish, a recent entrant, but it has colonized almost all wetlands in the Indian subcontinent. These are very hardy species, so they can survive in a highly polluted waters, and they feed on the several native species. This is African catfish. Then you have these exotic weeds. This is Eichhornia infestation in rivers, which is largely due to flow modification when there is a dam on the upstream, so the river flow is drastically reduced, and most of it is sewage flows, which encourage the change in the hydrology, results in the colonization of these invasive species, and also nutrient enrichment due to agricultural runoff, and other factors are causing colonization of these weeds. So this is another weed, especially in hill streams in Western Ghats and Eastern Himalaya. This is Mycenia macaranda. So wherever there is a riparian deforestation and there is a canopy opening, these exotic weeds, they quickly colonize, and they spread deep inside the forest through streams. So this is streams, the degraded streams, stream habitats became a corridor for these invasive species to colonize deep inside the forest ecosystems. So deforestation, especially in the Himalayan region, has caused a lot of damage to hill streams. So you have severe water scarcity in summer in these areas high up in Himalayas due to extreme rapid deforestation. And you have large hydraulic projects in eastern Himalaya where you have river diversions. So you have this interbasin transfer of water from one basin to another. So what happens is that to get a gradient for hydropower generation, water is transported from one river basin to another river basin through tunnels. So the downstream of one river basin becomes totally dry. So entire fauna vanishes uh, within days after the construction of the reservoir. So this is a very tragic. So several hill streams in eastern Himalaya have experienced this. So then the impact of dams and hydroelectric project, there is another aspect is that because of power generation, you have this regular flooding and drying of the rivers, periodic drying. So this happens in a daytime. So when there is a peak power generation, a lot of water is there in the stream, and when the power generation stops, the entire stream downstream becomes dry. So this happens cyclically every day, and after a few days, because the species cannot survive because there is a periodic drying and flooding, so the entire fauna downstream goes extinct. So this we can see them in several more in all the hydroelectric projects. This phenomenon you can see. And recent constructions of roads, especially without much planning, very destructive construction of roads in the slopes, high degree slopes, has caused a lot of damage. I'll show you. So this is a degradation after the rains, when the slopes become destabilized and everything comes down, causing they what happens is that the entire stream gets blocked, and there is a flood like situation. Flash floods happen because of this artificial dam formation during monsoon season. So this is very rampant in Himalayas because of this unplanned or unscientific way of construction infrastructure projects. Then rapid deforestations due to the hill streams. So the entire hydrology changes in the hill streams. This is another picture of the deforestation and its effect on hill streams. So the fauna disappears quickly, and there's a rampant like this because of all these things, the destruction of these slopes. We have these regular landslides and loss to human damage. So then another major problem this freshwater biodiversity faces is that agricultural runoff. So the most of the wetlands have a catchment and there is an intense agriculture activity in most of these catchments, either whether it is in the hills or in the plains. So all the agricultural runoff ultimately end up in a wetland, either it may be a pond or a lake or a river or a stream, and they change the water chemistry drastically, especially pesticides, and you have fertilizers, so nitrogenous fertilizers which enrich the wetland, or which pesticides which have direct effect on the aquatic organisms. So like intensive plantations, especially in the slopes, like several species are planted, and these are all causing destabilization in the riparian the river basins. And like we have this now recent trend of this rapid urbanization of hill stations, like because of lot of uh, tourism activity, especially in Himalaya and the Western Ghats. So many of these hill stations have become rapidly urbanized, and they don't have proper water treatment facility or a solid waste disposal facility. So most of this garbage or the wastewater end up in and the streams and rivers that is flowing through these rivers through these um, tourist destinations, cause lot of damage. And like you can see them in like even in uh, several of these, most of this plastic end up in the wetlands, in the rivers and streams. But there are other good examples also. There are several examples where people are doing a lot of eco-friendly activities in the wetlands. So these are the farm ponds in eastern Himalaya. So these are all organic farm ponds where there is no these are all part of the Jum cultivation ecosystem, where people do minimum damage to ecosystem inside forest enclaves. So they construct ponds and provide habitats for several species of aquatic organisms. They do cultivation for few years, then abandon this area and start new cultivation. So these are all areas where you can see still high diversity of freshwater organisms. So then comes to this domestic sewage, especially in the urban areas. So several, most of the urban areas don't have proper sewage treatment facilities, and most of these end up in the wetlands, rivers or lakes in the wetlands. So this is a Mulamuta River in Pune. It's a highly polluted, highly modified. You cannot call it a river anymore because it's so much modified. Or then comes you have this mining. Another major cause for damage to freshwater biodiversity is mining, in especially in headwaters, where you have all the open cast mining, where all the mining waste or tailings end up in the wetlands. And due to lot of demand, especially from urban areas, there is a heavy stone quarrying happening in the hills, especially in the Western Ghats. So there is a rapid urbanization in the cities like Bangalore, Chennai, or other urban areas. So Western Ghats, several quarries are opened up, both in private lands and also in revenue lands, causing lot of damage to hill streams, because in monsoon they become the hotspot for landslide, causing several damages. And with this all these things now, there is a recent phenomena that is started happening of the large scale flash floods, large scale flood due to this is attributed to changes in the climate, but also not only climate but also how we have modified the land, which is unable to take up a heavy rain, and because the waterways are damaged or blocked, or the hill slopes are damaged. So you have this sudden large flood. This is especially in Kerala. You remember in 2018 there is a flood which has caused us some tremendous damage. Why these unseasonal rains. Why this is related to the freshwater biodiversity I'm saying is that the breeding habitat and ecology of the many species of freshwater, both fishes and other invertebrates, are very fine tuned with our patterns in rain and how much water is flowing through rivers and streams. So they have very fine tuned clock of what is their life history and what is their activity. So with all these, their migratory routes, their everything is very very fine tuned, and these are evolved over millions of years of slow evolution. So what happens is that when you have this very sudden change in the habitat, very sudden change in the habitat, and when there is a sudden change in the water quality, or there is unexpected rain and large scale rain, they get transported over large distances, like especially like imagine a species adapted to streams get transported hundreds of kilometers away into a coastal area which where they cannot survive. So they, though you may see them and the adults, you may see them for few days, they cannot complete their life cycles and they vanish. So if this happens year after year, so this happens year after year, or even periodically, let us say about five, once in 5 years or once in 10 years, over the period of time many of these species will disappear because their populations will diminish. Already many of these species, they don't have, their populations are small, so many of them are narrow endemic. So there are several species which are restricted to one stream or one basin or sub basin. When you have this repeated flooding of rivers and streams, they disappear over the period of time. So this is Kerala flood, which I was talking about. So last year also we had another flood, but this time it was not in Kerala, but this was in Konkan. So again, similar situation. So this is happening. So we have to understand that this is happening. So every year the place may change, but this is going to happen every year. So this is one of the predictions of the climate change, that we are going to have this very high rainfall in some places and very low rainfall in some places. So like recent global understanding is that uh, the all the biodiversity, either terrestrial, freshwater, or marine biodiversity, is declining over the years throughout the globe, and this has caused tremendous reduction in our ecosystem services, because all these biodiversity and ecosystem provide important services to humanity, which you cannot measure in terms of money. But though some people have tried to make measurements of the amount of value this, which runs into billions of dollars, which is unimaginable. And especially the services, both the provisioning services, regulating services, or the supporting services, or the cultural services of all these ecosystems, either it be freshwater, marine, or terrestrial ecosystem, is declining. And this is largely due to the pressure we are putting on the biodiversity due to habitat loss or over harvesting or the pollution which we are causing. And the drivers for this are transboundary. Like for example, you have a huge demand of a um, freshwater, beautifully looking freshwater species of fish in the Western Ghats in an international market. So the demand may be in Singapore or in Australia, but the population which is residing in the Western Ghats stream is exploited. So few dollars are exchanged, but these are over exploited. So for some people's drivers, like some people's interest or some people's hobby, is causing lot of damage to the river system. So now the because of the globalization, the linkages are such that the our demand for snack food, like for example, our demand for snack food is causing lot of damage to the wetlands in the Indonesia, because people are draining swamps, forest swamps, and cultivating palm oil because our interest. So these are the drivers or transboundary drivers. So you may be thinking, you may be very interested to eat a snack on the roadside snack, or which is because it is made with the cheap oil. So the oil food, the cooking oil which we are using is maybe cheap, but that is driving a another ecosystem to extinction, another species to extinction, because you have these transboundary drivers of demand, which is of course lot of dollars are exchanged in this demand. But these are all, some of them are necessary and some of them are not essential, some of them are luxury, and some of them are for the your leisure. So these drivers we need to identify and act at a regional and a global level and a local level to this one. So mostly our resource efficiency or the consumption patterns that is causing the loss of biodiversity in our system. And I already told you there are several sustainable models of like small scale sustainable models which are living in harmony with ecosystems. And there are some states which have completely moved to the organic farming. So Sikkim is one of the best examples. Slowly they moved from pesticide or in agriculture, intensive agriculture based to the uh, organic farming, and which have done some very good, which have shown some very good results in terms of regaining biodiversity. I have done some studies with the students of Sikkim University, and they have shown that the students have done very wonderful work in documenting the how the these organic rice systems are supporting biodiversity, especially freshwater biodiversity. So these are some of the good models. And like you have very good models again in other part of India, like this Apatani rice field systems in Zero Valley in Arunachal Pradesh, where they have organic rice cultivation with fish cultivation, which is providing economic benefit, tourism benefit, and also supporting biodiversity. We have several laws and other government initiatives. There are about 30 laws which is dealing with conservation of freshwater biodiversity. Earliest one being the Indian Fisheries Act 1857, to the latest one, the Wetland Conservation Management Rules 2017. We need to effectively implement these laws and policies at the ground level. Then only we can conserve. And it is not just a responsibility of the government or the government agencies or the local government to implement this. As citizen, we also have a lot of responsibilities in conserving wetlands, and we all need to work together. And with this, I stop here, and I request Dr. Bharat to take over. And I thank all of you for a very patient and listening. Thank you, Bharat.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot for sharing your vast knowledge on freshwater biodiversity. So there are some few questions, so I will try to read out.
Okay,
So
so shall
first one
I
is,
shall I close the presentation?
so it can be there also. I will read out it so that you can answer it.
Okay.
So there is a appreciation from Manasvi Kiran. Thanks for very interesting overview on Indian landscape elements.
So,
So
so what is the question?
no, there is appreciation.
Okay, okay,
Thanks
okay.
for
Thank you, thank
very
you, thank you.
interesting
Okay,
overview on Indian landscape elements.
okay. Thank you very much.
So there is a question from Varun Sharma. Is there any protection policy measures proposed for protection of freshwater biodiversity? I think you have highlighted it. So
Yes,
he
yes.
has
There
asked
are
before.
several laws are there. So largest, the most powerful law is our Wildlife Protection Act. So through that, several wetlands are protected as declaring as sanctuaries in national park, and several wetland species, especially the wetland birds and mammals, are protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. And fishes are not protected under Wildlife Protection Act because it has a livelihood issue. So several species are protected under Wildlife Protection Act.
So there is a question from Mahansh. Sir, what might be the reason for the extinction of pink-headed duck?
There is no clear documentation because there was a clearly there was harvest was there, hunting was there, but over the years its entire range it got disappeared. So the clear reason why it got extinct, there is no clear documentation of the disappearance of extinction of the pink-headed duck. But there were trade, so there were trade, people were harvesting pink-headed duck, but other species of ducks were also harvested, but they didn't go extinct. Why only pink-headed got extinct, we really don't know the answer.
Okay. So there is a question from Varun. Is increase in carbon dioxide emission has any impact on species extinction?
Yes, but that is mostly documented cases are for the marine organisms, especially corals and other things. But increase in carbon dioxide emission has impact on the like freshwater ecosystem because it can change the water chemistry drastically, especially when you have situations like acid rains and other things. So it has impact on the uh, wetland ecosystems.
So there is a question from Paromita Ghosh. How many freshwater fish species in the Western Himalaya? So she want to know how many freshwater fish species in Himalaya.
I don't know the exact number, but all over India, more than 1,000 species are recorded, and nearly. Uh, so I don't know how many exactly in the Western Himalaya. I don't really
Okay.
know.
So there is a question from Manasvi. Can you highlight the ecosystem restoration measures with respect to the freshwater biodiversity?
Okay, so like it is relatively easy to restore a pond or a lake, but very difficult to restore a river to its old, how it was pristine condition, because rivers have evolved over millions of years, and most of the lakes in the peninsular India are man-made, because they were made during like especially if you look at the history, most of these lakes are made by man for agriculture or for water security over the years, and they were managed by people village. So there were regular desilting and the banks were strengthened. There were this one. So restoration of these kind of wetlands are relatively easy, because you need to do only some basic engineering work, and people are our villagers are very good at it, to restoring lakes. So there are several examples where lakes are restored, but river restoration is very difficult, because the entire river basin need to be restored, and in the terms of its flow, and especially if you have a dam, so you have to decommission a dam. That is very difficult, near to impossibility, and riparian forests need to be restored. So it's a very slow process, so you cannot get a result in like 10 or 15 years. You may have to wait for hundreds of years to get a restoration of result, river restoration. But of course, you can do immediate steps, like you can water quality, like you can check the pollution, you can check the flow of sewage, you can strengthen the banks, you can reduce the flow of sewage, and other things can be done. Cleaning, all those things can be done very easily, but it all involves a lot of resources.
Okay. So there is a appreciation from Muralidharan. Dear sir, heartily thanks for your valuable information. A to Z biodiversity of freshwater animal in India. The great question: how to conserve, how to change the human lifestyle, how to
Everybody have to.
conserve, how to change the human lifestyle.
That is a collective decision, no? Yeah, like individual decision. Everybody have to, like you cannot have a rule or a law to say that you have to change lifestyle. Everybody have to change lifestyle themselves. So it is like everybody if start doing that, then like it will be a collective outcome will come. Like, so we have, like in the history we have taken such decisions, so like quitting smoking or quitting drinking, like so like you have to take individual decisions, so that will be that the effect will be shown very, like you can discard, like I will not use I will carry a I will not use a discardable, like I will carry a water bottle. Small things can be done, so that it can be have a long term effect. Like I will, like that you can
Okay,
do several things.
okay, sir. There is a appreciation from Neena Sharma from Chandigarh. Sir, very relevant observations. Thanks for enlightening us.
Thank you.
So there is a question from Paras. So how organic farming helps in regaining freshwater biodiversity?
Okay, so when you have organic farming, you don't put pesticides, or you don't put for nitrogenous fertilizers. So the wetland, many biota of the many species start recolonizing the wetlands. That is associated with that organic farming system. So you like the, especially many of these pesticide what we use in agriculture have a impact. They also harm other organisms like frogs and other aquatic invertebrates and fishes. So they are also harmful to them. So only thing is that it is not very widely known, but they have the effect, what we call it as in the scientific term as non-target effect on non-target organisms, also they have effect, especially the modern pesticides like synthetic pyrethroids or the juvenile hormone analogs, they all have effect. So which is mostly in the wetland organisms. So when you stop using them immediately, you can see them that in maybe 1 or 2 years all these species start reappearing, frogs and other things, they start reappearing.
Okay. So there is some question from Nina. How to discard the water bottle made of plastic?
You have to recycle it. That's all. There is no other. You cannot discard it.
Okay. So looks like there are no more questions. Uh, Thank you so much, sir, for answering all the questions. On behalf of Envis Indian Staff Science, we wholeheartedly thanks for sharing your knowledge with our participants. So we hope our association will continue in near
Yes,
future
yes,
also.
yes,
So
yes.
thank you so much, sir. So
Thank
I
you very much.
request,
Thank you very
yeah,
much. I also take opportunity to thank Envis for giving me an opportunity to interact with you all. Thank you very much. And my email is given there. And if you have any doubt, you are always free to mail me. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Bharat. Thank you, Dr.
sure,
Ramchandra,
sure.
for giving me an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Sure, sir. So, dear students, please subscribe to the EWRG Envis channel so that you will be notified the coming webinars which are conducted under Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat initiative. So, please share this channel details with your friends and subscribe to the channel. So, we will come up with another very interesting topic in near very soon. Thank you one and all. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So I will leave it. I will leave this.
Sure, sure, sir.
Thank you.